الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. ثم أما بعد. MashaAllah, it is an extra special honor and privilege to enjoy your company in the blessed month of Ramadan. I've been traveling a bit and still trying to exercise a bit. And because I was at the hotel, my suhoor was just water, which is actually not a bad suhoor, but I feel that very subdued feeling, that you get with fasting. So forgive me if my presentation lacks the energy that you're accustomed to. I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure you can identify. But we're still discussing the names of Allah. And MashaAllah, I think we've come to a very important name of Allah, Al-Mu'min. This is a name that, of course, we are characterized by Iman, right, as Mu'min, and Allah is Al-Mu'min. And I think the inquisitive listener, the inquisitive student would naturally ask, well, how can we share a name with Allah? Or now there's different attributes that we share with Allah, like Kareem, Rahim, Mu'min is one of those attributes that we share with Allah. Al-Mu'min refers to God's capacity to give safety, to give security. It is God who makes you feel safe. It is God who gives you security. It is God that protects you. And when we refer to people of faith as mu'minun, or believers, it is because faith is supposed to provide one with security. Faith is supposed to provide one with protection. Now, it doesn't take the form of a physical protection. It is a protection that comes through understanding. You know, Ibn Ata'illah, he has, there's a book that I think I read in it, either here or Tetley. I'm getting so old now, it's getting mixed up in my mind. But he talks about 10 ways that God gives his servant security when she's going through something very difficult. Right? And as you go through all 10 of these points, you see that all of them are just different expressions of the same phenomenon. That even though one might be experiencing adversity, one might be experiencing trial, one might be dealing with a very severe test, but in this way, God will provide you with security. So a few of those that come to mind, he says one way that God provides you with security is through your ability to understand the significance of the test that you're experiencing. That you can actually see that this will increase my ability to be patient. This will increase my ability to be understanding. This will increase my sincerity. So like fasting. Fasting has many benefits, but the greatest benefit of all is fasting heightens one's sincerity, right? When a person is fasting, and it's always something that it never ceases to amaze me. I always find it remarkable. Hold on 1 second. We'll get back to him later. I always find it remarkable that you could take a Muslim who regards him or herself as moderate in their practice of Islam. Meaning, I'm not, the best Muslim. They might even regard themselves as not particularly devout. But in the month of Ramadan, all alone, in the house, all of the blinds closed, right? All of the curtains drawn, they would not think of taking a single sip of water. Even though they know, nobody would know. If my religious practice was really about social conformity, I just want to go with the flow. I don't want to upset my mother, don't want to upset my father. I'm a part of the Muslim culture. Some people say I'm culturally Muslim. So Ramadan for me is kind of a cultural celebration. My thing is, well, you're home alone, you're thirsty, you're hungry. Why won't you take that? Why won't you take that drink? Why won't you just enjoy that appetizer? You can still go to the masjid for Maghrib, pretending to be hungry. What time is iftar? Nobody would know. But we wouldn't do it because God would know. This is like the highest, this is what religion aims to inculcate. God would know. And that's enough. I can't do it because God would know. So here we have hunger, we have thirst. Maybe some of us have bad breath right now, right? The Prophet ﷺ said the khuluf, the bad breath of the person fasting is sweeter to God than the scent of musk, right? We might feel lethargic, it's deep because I told my wife, I said, I'm gonna wear this jalabia the whole Ramadan. I have to fast from clothes because I love clothes too much. No, this is part. This is not a wajib. It's part of my individual fast. For Ramadan, I will wear this jalabia. This jalabia, I will wear for the entire Ramadan. No matter what speaking engagements, where I'm going, I will wear this jalabia for the entire Ramadan. So I was in the airport, and I realized because I had kind of that I'm fasting, kind of weakened look to me. People were coming up to me like, are you a priest? Are you the funniest thing, I was coming through security. And I was telling my wife, I said, man, this really helps me to be in solidarity with women that wear hijab. Because people just assume a kind of foreignness. And I had a miswak, and they went in the bag and they said, that's what they brush their teeth with. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's how they brush their teeth. I was like, I started to show my teeth. It works very well, as you can see from my teeth. You know, but we can endure the hunger, endure the thirst, endure, the lethargy, because we understand this is building our sincerity. This is building our patience. We will see the reward when we meet God. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Lis-sa'imi farhatan, farhatun inda iftari." For the person fasting, he has two joys. She has two joys. Farhatun inda iftariha. One joy when she has iftar, because water never tasted so good. When you drink water after your face, say, man, it's amazing. Yeah, those dates are so succulent, right? Actually, I know a brother, Dawood Yassin from California. I think he said 7 days he did for iftar and suhoor. 7 dates, 2 mason jars of water. That's it. I said, man, after the 7th day, how did you feel? Hungry. What do you mean, how did I feel? 7 dates for iftar, 2 mason jars of water. 7 dates for suhoor, 2 mason jars of water. He said his wife convinced him to stop. Said, you better eat now. This has gone far enough. This has gone far enough. Right? But we understand what this is. So this is a way that you can experience hardship. Fasting is voluntary hardship. This is not easy. I really praise our community that we have become so habituated to fasting that we talk about it like it's nothing. I'm just fasting. If you mention this practice to someone who doesn't do it, they're shocked. Not even water? Nothing? 30 days? And we're sitting there, grimacing. I know some people still going to the gym, still taking their walks. I'm a Muslim. It's just what I have to do, because we understand. We understand why we're doing this. And the other, and a joy when you meet your Lord, that you will see every moment you spent fasting. This is being recorded for you. In this way, you can go through hardship. Every hardship we experience is identical to that. If you're experiencing a great hardship, but you understand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُم بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. صَدَقَ اللَّهُ الْعَظِيمُ. Allah said, the patient will reap their reward, or the patient will be given their reward in full, بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. They won't even be questioned. People that endured hardship in the life of this world will enter paradise without even being questioned about their lives. The question is, no pun intended, how will you become one of those patient people? How will you become one of those people who are admitted to paradise without reckoning, except experiencing hardship? So if one of us finds himself in a position of difficulty, but understands this is the sacrifice that must be made for heaven. This is the price that must be paid for paradise. In that way, Allah is al-mu'min. Allah gives you security. It's like, it's not easy, but I understand what I'm going. I understand the end result of what I'm going through. I understand. This is what it's about. And so you can be secure even in a position of hardship. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that he was shown paradise. And Paradise, one of the, I had an experience. I was in Dearborn for the weekend. Right? Man, they had a community night in Dearborn where people were encouraged to invite colleagues, neighbors, people of other faiths, people of no faith at all, come to the masjid, have iftar with the Muslims, hear a lecture about Islam and Muslims. And sometimes as a public speaker or a lecturer, you give a lecture and you really feel like, man, I'm on today, man. Everything is hidden, I'm connected with my audience. And I had that feeling yesterday, like things were going really well. And one attendee said, I've heard Muslims talk about heaven having levels. As a Christian, I've never heard anything about levels of heaven. Can you talk a little bit about that? And so I said, it's really it's something that challenges the way we conventionally think, because everybody admitted to heaven experiences complete satisfaction. Nobody in any level of heaven is wanting for anything. However, in some way, the second level of heaven is higher than the first, the third higher than the second, and so on and so forth, until you get to the highest level of heaven, where people will see their Lord. How that seeing occurs, I said, I would divide this entire room of Muslims if I started talking about that. Is it a seeing with the heart or seeing with the eye? I don't want to get into that. But there is this gradation, if you will, of the pleasures the people of paradise enjoy. But all of them are completely satisfied at the same time. And she was like, wow. So a white American woman. And then a Yemeni brother stood up. And he said, why are we talking about levels of heaven? Tell her how to get to heaven. And he proceeded to give his own lecture inside my lecture for the next 20 minutes. And my head was completely horizontal. He was giving da'wah like he was trying to sell a used car. Right? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, man, what just happened? Right? What just happened? I felt like my audience was connecting with me, everything was, he just went and did his own thing. And I think when he finished, after his summary, she was just like, oh, oh, wow. You know what I'm saying? And then he stopped. And I started to resume. And another brother chimed in. Yes, you see. And he spoke for another 15 minutes. I was like, all of the organizers were like apologizing to me and stuff like that. But I just want to get that off my chest. That has nothing to do with it. I'm just venting. I felt like I was painting a portrait with this speech, and somebody came and said, and I'm talking, it took me a while to kind of like get my energy, but I was just like the whole night, look, the killing part is he said, and I've written a book about it. He written his bag, he started giving out a book. I'm just like, and may God bless him, man. For all I know, he was just a sincere brother. He was just a sincere brother, man. He was just a sincere brother. But this question of levels of heaven and heaven, this was the connection. I just really want to get that off my chest. But it really angered me. I had to call my wife when I got back to the hotel, like, I'm through messing with this community. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. Right? But 25-minute, two tangents that lasted 25 minutes. I was done. But if you see this, you have bad edit, but you're very sincere, brother. May Allah reward you and teach you with gentleness, inshallah. But I was talking about the vividness of the descriptions of heaven in the Quran and the Sunnah. So, heaven contains, things that no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, no mind or heart has ever pondered, ever considered. La yakhtur bibalin, never ever considered. And the Prophet ﷺ was sitting there taking in the beauty of heaven. The word in Arabic is bahja, like it's wonder, it's splendor. And he said to Jibreel, alayhi wassalam, why would anybody do anything to distance him or herself from a place so beautiful? And then Jibreel raised the Prophet ﷺ, and he raised him until he was given a panoramic view of heaven. And he saw that it was surrounded by makari, by masa'ib, difficulties, hardship, trials, tests. And then the Prophet said, ﷺ, who will be able to get through these so that they can get to this? And then the inverse happened with hell. Hell also contains things that no eye has seen, but they're horrible. They're, these are wretched sights that no eye has seen. Horrible things that no ear has heard. Horrors, terrors, frightening things that no heart has pondered or considered, no mind has considered. And the Prophet ﷺ said, who would do anything that would lead to something like this? And then he was taken up, given that same panoramic view of hell, and it was surrounded by farah, amusement, joy, not joy, pleasure, better word, not joy. Joy is something different than that. Pleasure, amusement, vain sport, vain play, things that are attractive. And the question became, how will people get through those or resist the temptation of those so as not to wind up here? When you are experiencing hardship, difficulty, trial, affliction, you can have that understanding, and in that way, God can give you security. God can protect you. That is the protection that your iman is supposed to offer you. It's a protection of understanding. Okay, I understand this. I understand this, right? We don't react to loss in the same way other people react to loss. See, the believer loses. The Prophet ﷺ says in an authentic hadith, and this is just something to think about. The believer, he or she does not prick their finger on a thorn, except that some sin is relieved by that discomfort. I mean, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, but we have an understanding that any pain, any discomfort that I experience, this is a means of Allah relieving me of any sins, any misdeeds, any bad deeds that I might have committed. So we can deal with loss, we can deal with pain differently. All of this is an expression of Allah's name, Al-Mu'min. Allah gives you security. Now, in addition to that, psychological security, that security through faith, Allah also gives us physical security. Right? This is a blessing that many of us enjoy that we scarcely thank Allah for. It's security. That many of us wake up and we are not concerned about our safety. We don't have any concerns about the safety of our persons or our belongings. There are people who are waking up right now in complete dread about what's going to happen to them. Many of them, our brothers and sisters, right? Will a bomb be dropped on me today? I don't know. Will I be able to access nutritious food today? I don't know. Is someone going to physically assault me today? I don't know. Those of us who don't wake up in that situation, those of us who scarcely experience anything like that ever, we have to give gratitude. We have to show gratitude. We have to give thanks to Allah for providing us with security. You know, I always say that to me, security after, or perhaps even before, our foundational material like needs, like sustenance-based needs, food, clothing, shelter, I think security is right up there. Because if you don't enjoy security, you can scarcely think about anything else. If you're worried that somebody's going to come through this door and harm you, can you really pay attention to what I'm saying? You can scarcely, this is why when there's violence in the home, it's not really a home. Because I can't be at ease in a place that I experience abuse. I can never really relax. Because you just don't know when the abusive person will become abusive. My entire experience is like, the expression is walking on eggshells. You don't have any security. It is Allah that provides security. You know, Surah Quraysh, we don't realize this, but the surah of the Quran entitled Quraysh is an entire minhaj. It's a methodology. It's a methodology that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala li'ilafi Quraysh, for the trade caravans of Quraysh, right? Those that come and go. A bit of history about this surah. Quraysh had two sets of trading caravans. They would send people north to Byzantium, or present-day Syria, but they would also send people east to India, right? There were different things that they got in from the Byzantines, but they got spices from India. And you know, it's weird because we talk about spices and we think like spices. You mean the little condiments that we put on our food? In the ancient world, spices were almost like oil. Hard for you to, like you go in the cabinet now and grab a little paprika and just put it on there. It's nothing to you. You go to, you know, oh, I need some thyme and I need some, I don't know a lot of spices. Basil, I need some basil, I need some thyme, I need some paprika, I need some nutmeg. And then you check out and maybe each little jar costs you $3 or something like that. In the ancient world, blood was spilled over that nutmeg. People fought, died for this paprika. Sounds almost crazy to us, man. Like the spice trade was huge. The kings of the spice trade were India. India was known to have the best spices, the choicest spices. If you could create some kind of trade relationship with people in the Indian subcontinent, This guaranteed your status, your prominence economically. This is one of the reasons that Arab would name their daughters and their sons Hind, because India represented everything good. Even the best sword among the Arabs, they called the Muhannad, the Indian-made sword. Yeah, like a lot of us don't realize that in the Sirah, they had like a fetishization of India. Everything that comes from India is the best. Best spices, best swords, like they have a certain fetish. India. The Quraysh had trade partners in India, and they had a monopoly on the spice trade. This is what made them wealthy and powerful. So they would send trading caravans in the summer to the Romans, the Roman Empire. Byzantines that's the Eastern Roman Empire, is Byzantium. But then in the winter time, they would go to India and get the spices. And this is what made them the most powerful tribe. Now, I don't know how this turned into a history lesson, but it did. When you had, no, it's on Ramadan, it's okay. If somebody falls asleep during my class on Ramadan, I'm looking at them thinking, I would like to be sleeping. But they're paying me to do this. I want to go to sleep. A trade route requires a lot of coordinated treaties, because you have to pass through a lot of uncharted territory on your way and on your way back. If you don't have like the whole thing on lock, you are going to get robbed. You can't make it from Arabia to India unless you have many partners. Like this is not just like, yeah, we can ready to come pick that up. Okay, we got everything waiting for you. So I'm like, no, this is like, it takes years to solidify these relationships. Like I have relationships with people going from here, I can get from here all the way to India and get back. And I'm not worried about anybody harming me. And I have literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in merchandise, in spices with me. Nobody is going to touch me because we've fortified these relationships over years. Quraysh had those relationships. Nobody else had those relationships. So when Allah says to them, it is God who gave you the aman. It is God who gave you the security. Allah is talking about what? The security to travel to India and travel back. Allah gave you this. This is what led to your prominence in the Arabian Peninsula. Many people say, and I don't know why we don't do this as Americans. If you are trying to give da'wah to a prosperous people, rather than trying to make them feel ashamed about being prosperous, that never works. Or trying to make them feel ashamed about being powerful, that never works. Talk to them about God being the source of their prominence, God being the source of their power, God being the source of their privilege. That's what Surah Quraysh represents. That if you talk to someone who's powerful, try to get them to see that you didn't do this on your own. God gave you this. You all didn't just, all of the relationships that it takes to secure that trade route. This is a blessing from God that you have this. And then, of course, at the end of the surah, Allah says what? So worship God. Give thanks to God for what you have, right? But people talk about anyone who enjoys security, enjoys privilege, enjoys priority. Remind them that God is the source of your privilege. Don't try to shame them, right? Because they, they'll end up calling you a hater. See, this is the truth. If you think that ain't nothing, and you just hate. You just a hater. You just mad that you ain't got it, right? So look at the lesson of the two men in Surah Al-Kahf. The neighbor said to him, if only إذا دخلت جنتك قلت لا قوة إلا ما شاء الله لا قوة إلا بالله. If only when you entered your garden, you said, MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah. He was showing in that I have no jealousy. I'm not envious of what God has given you. I just want to see you acknowledge God as the giver so that you can be protected as mu'min in what you have. I don't have any envy. That is how we should be talking to our neighbors. That is how we should be talking to our colleagues, reminding them. You know, man, there was a time, and see, Americans have, some Americans have been privileged for so long. It's hard for them to imagine a scenario in which they were not, right? It's hard for them to imagine, there was a time when none of us had what we enjoy so much. Like, the wonders of modern technology and healthcare. There was a time when none of us enjoyed that. There was a time when none of us enjoyed the relative, and I do say relative, all of these banks collapsing. I don't even know if and that's the thing. If you don't give thanks and you don't acknowledge God for the stability, God will take it from you. Right? And I know economists that tell me people don't know it because they're still going out and just shopping and going to movies, but the economy is in a more precarious position now than maybe it's ever been in. Which is not, I'm not telling you to, pull all of your money out of the market and the bank, that's just make it more precarious. No. Actually, yeah, it's the truth. I mean, that's a different conversation. Right? They say that this whole edifice is built on confidence. If people have confidence and they're investing, everything's going well. Because this is an economy where we just move money around. The minute people get scared and start pulling their money out, now things are in jeopardy of collapsing. Things are now in danger of collapsing. So I don't want to contribute to the downfall of the U.S. economy. I'll just say, all is well, mashallah. All is well, mashallah. Keep your money in the market. Keep your money in banks. All is well. All is well, mashallah. All is well. No, but things are more precarious now than they've ever been, right? So Allah is the one that gives security, right? In terms of living with this name, wow, I guess he just wanted to clear his throat on the mic. The Maghrib is not for a while. I'm gonna end a little bit early today because I have to pick up my wife from her PTO meeting. But I'm almost as bad as some of the teachers I had, not at the university level, but in the Ma'had, the Azhari Institute. We used to joke. He said, man, class is 3 hours. Teacher would come an hour early. Would come an hour late, sleep for an hour, leave an hour early. This is testing the microphone. Allah Akbar, man. Hey, man, we have to love our cha-chas, man. We love our cha-chas, man. This is testing the microphone. It works, mashallah. It works. We have to love our cha-chas, man. Mashallah. I actually think I'm off topic now, but I'm fasting, so I'm in another world. But I'm in another world. But that's actually that should be one of the coolest and most unique things about the Muslim community. It's a place where getting older is honored. They say, like in the larger society, our culture has become so youth-oriented that age is just defeat. Like as you get old, there's nothing left for you. And if you have a kind of a shahwa, like a desire-centered worldview, age represents the inability to access that desire. So age is defeat. But if you have a worldview centered on the spirit, the soul, the refinement of the nafs, age actually represents perfection. Age represents an opportunity to be better, right? So mashallah, we have to, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man lam yuwakkir kibarana wa lam yarham sigharana, fahuwa laysa minna." قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام, whoever fails to respect our elderly and have mercy on our youth is not one of us. And many people say, doesn't mean not a Muslim, but not from the best Muslims. That the best Muslims are always gentle with the young. They're still learning, right? They're gentle with the young, patient with the young, he's still learning, she's still learning. They haven't, it's almost like, I remember once I was in a madrasa, mashallah, and I was living at this madrasa, I was living at this religious school with these younger brothers. And the teacher would come in to wake us up for Fajr, the dawn prayer. And we had these metal bunk beds, and they would just hit the bunk beds. And, I would just get up, and make wudu. But there were a few younger brothers, but they just could not get out of the bed. I mean, the teacher sitting there banging the thing, Fajr, Fajr, Fajr. And they would just be, as I remember saying to one, I said, you've been doing this your whole life. Because I'm a new Muslim, like not completely new, but new to this world. It's still hard for you to do. He turned over the bed and said, that's the thing. I don't even do this at home. He was lucid for that one comment. I don't even do this at home. And that's what I saw. Even the young students of Quran, he's still learning just to make his prayers on time. Right? And he was a great reciter of Quran. I'm like, man, you almost a Hafiz, man. You can't even get out of the bed and pray. Have mercy on our young. He was a young man. He's probably 15. Come on, you gotta pray, man. You guys better get up. You gotta get up. See, I'm not banging it. I'm putting the water bottle. Get out the bed, man. He gotta pray. And he still loves me to this day for that. That goes obey the law by. He used to put the water on me to get me out the bed to pray. Get out the bed. We gotta pray. We gotta get up. Let's go. Right? But so living with this name, if you feel danger, you sense danger, call on Allah. Ya al-Mu'min. Ya Mu'min, O one who gives security. Any anxiety that you feel, ask Allah to protect you. And ask for his protection through the name Al-Mu'min. Allah, Amin comes from you. Security comes from Allah. Security comes from Allah. So with that, we'll open, inshallah. Anybody who has anything they want to ask a question about, if you want to know when is Maghrib, 7-11. They say that, Ramadan is the only time of year. Every Muslim knows the time of Maghrib. They know it like when is Maghrib? 7:10. I was joking with somebody yesterday. I said, of course, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they weren't able to record time, in that way. So it was always more general than that. But I think the safest thing for us is to use the calendars, the schedules, because we're not experienced watchers of the sky, and the sky has so much artificial light that we can, just use the schedule. But I'm like, they never probably said like 5, 4, 3, 2. It's just a general, it's Fajr. It's Fajr. So if a person's eating suhoor a few minutes here, there, really, I do not think it's that serious. Some people are like, Fajr came in at 5:35, it's 5:36, you're still eating. It's like, I don't think the Sahaba even had, it's a general kind of orientation. Whenever the adhan was called, it's time to put the food away and let's start fasting. But I don't think they had like watches. Bilal, 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds. And now, it was a much time, which isn't that interesting though? I find that idea, like, I can't imagine time without clocks. So like when do you, like how do you schedule a meeting with somebody? I'll meet you. How do you think they did that? Maybe based off the position of the sun, maybe based off um like, and I'm not talking about just Muslim, just around the world. Before time was recorded, what did you say? Like, I bet it was based on like schedules. Like, I'll meet you, activity. I'll meet you when we finish the, but that would mean that the schedule has to be very regimented. Like, when he finishes milking his goats, then I'll come around and talk. But I guess that has to happen that has to happen around the same time every day. You know what I'm saying? When he finishes, when he opens his shop, I'll meet you there. Like, and I'm thinking like, if you could go back and like superimpose a clock, I wonder how precise they were. Well, if they had this like, pre-recorded time way of meeting, maybe say, I'll meet you when he opens his shop. One day it was 8:02, next day it was 8:07, one day it was 8:15. But somehow life works. It wasn't, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Other questions, comments, ideas? Yes. I got a question for you.
Oh, that's right now. Okay, so I was thinking about like just the proper etiquette of making dua. Like I've been so usually I'll like seek refuge from shaitan and then do like a fatiha and then send salawat and then use one of Allah's names and then make the dua. So is it you use one of Allah's names first and then send salawat, or is it
I think this is one of those areas where tanweeh or variation is a good thing. I think that, and with due respect to people of superior knowledge, but anyone who talks about dua like it has one specific formula, you're making something big, very small. I don't think if a person is calling on God, I don't think there's necessarily any wrong way to do it. I do think that Al-Fatiha, which is the prayer through which we call on God the most, in all of our prayers, it's the one surah of the Quran that almost every Muslim is familiar with. It does show that there is praise before asking, right? This is what I've learned from my teachers, that Fatiha shows that you praise first, then ask. That is the etiquette that I learned, that you praise God first, then ask for what you want, right? I've also heard that salawat on the Prophet ﷺ is always accepted. Right. That's not, that's a prayer. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Right? So that's a prayer that is always accepted. So if you begin with salawat, then you insert your ask, right? Then you end with salawat. Some people say Allah is too generous to accept the beginning, accept the end, and not accept what's between the beginning and end. Right? But again, I think these are kind of speculative conclusions. I don't think there's anything in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that you have to make dua like this. I think people are creatively, and I know like Muslims are against all creativity. I think people are creatively thinking about ways to beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't think that any way is wrong necessarily. But I mean, those are two etiquettes. I know the salawat and praising God first before asking God. Right. No, so I guess I can't ask you my question. So how is it? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Other questions?
I hear about like certain
Right.
the foundation of founded on it.
You know,
I mean, people singing, dancing, instrument, creativity, like you said.
there's a few. I mean, this is a big topic, but music in particular, I think it's very important for us to recognize one. I think people in the past had a much deeper appreciation for the power of music because of how they experienced music. You know, this like I don't know why this was like for me. This was like an opening, an intellectual opening. Whenever you read any traditional book, whether it's a book of hadith or a book of law, fiqh, when they say music, the only music they know is live performance. There are no cassettes. There is no way that you can just like put music on in your house. And this, the only music that the scholars, the classical scholars know, the Prophet ﷺ knows, the companions know is live music. With that, music, anyone who goes to concerts, anyone who's been to concerts, live music, I think is just a much more transformative experience than recorded music. It's different. So when music is addressed in the tradition, they're not talking about like this little background sound that you hear in an elevator. They're talking about a whole environment that is created by musical performance. As was normally the case in the context of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, for many classical scholars, that environment was an immoral one. That for them, music, drinking, and sexual indecency all went together. They were like a package deal. Like it was a package, meaning like you couldn't have one without the other. In the same way that we talk about like sex, drugs, rock and roll. We talk about that like it's a package deal. They go together, right? So when they talk about music, they're talking about something very specific, not something general. Whenever they encounter song or even music, certain instruments that were used in different ways, many classical scholars and the Prophet ﷺ would always say, no, that's not what we're talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. So when somebody would, like for instance, you had camel shepherds that would summon their camels. They would release them to pasture. They want to get the camels back together. They had lullabies that when the camels heard these lullabies, the camels would all come into form. Somebody say, this is the haram singing. They said, no, that's not the haram singing. Or people would play drums going into battle. People say, this is the haram music. No, it's not the haram music. This is trying to build the morale of the soldiers. So usually when music has a context that is not immoral, it's judged differently. You see that? So people who talk about the permissibility of music, they're saying that even though the word being used is am, this is very like legal language. What they have in mind, the word being used is general, music. What they have in mind is something khas, something very specific, immoral music or music that incites immorality. That's what they're talking about. Not Sister Benta singing about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or singing about some real aspect of life or something like that. They have something else in their mind, but they're using, it's just like if I say to my kids, like I say to my daughters and my son, stay from in front of those screens. I'm using a general term, screens. But now if they're watching a program with Quran or something on the screen. You think that's what I'm talking about when I say stay from in front of those screens? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about all the frivolous entertainment that I typically associate with screens. So whenever the term music occurs in the tradition, some argue, even though they're just using the term music, they're talking about something very specific. Immorality inducing music. Music that contributes to sin. That's what they're talking about. Not just any music. And that was usually based on the context of how those instruments were used. So like you'll find in Islamic legal literature, there's a particular distaste for which instrument you think? Flute. There's a particular, because the flute was seen as overtly sensual. The flute this was the reputation of the flute, right? There's it's like a snake charmer, right? Bobby Humphrey, right? A flute player, you know what I mean? There's a particular, there's a particular thing for the flute. That's not because there's something about it, was how the flute was used in their context. The flute was particularly used for, it's almost like, girl, he played the flute. The flute was notorious. They had a flute. So I just felt like I had to take off my clothes. It was a flute there. How can anybody you have to do something haram? It was a flute. You heard it. That was the character of the flute. You see, so now people that take a much more, I would say, a safe approach, that they take the general term musica or mazif, music, and they just apply it to any rhythmic, syncopated sounds, rhythms. Allah yubarik fihi. We respect it. We don't look at them as extreme. That's an approach. People who say, no, this is a case of a particular thing being intended, but a general phrase being used. I respect that position as well. Okay, we're in there, inshallah. I know you guys have to get somewhere to get something to eat. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Al-Asr. إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم تقبل صيامنا وقيامنا آمين يا رب العالمين. جزاكم الله كل خير. The Muslim Franciscan is leaving.